The conference room smelled like ozone and expensive, unearned confidence. It was one of those glass-walled fishbowl rooms designed to make everyone inside feel exposed and everyone outside feel excluded. At the head of the table sat Gavin, a 25-year-old in a fleece vest that cost more than my first car. He was our new chief technology officer who had been on the job for 3 weeks. In that time, his primary contribution had been replacing the break room coffee with combat kombucha and calling our mainframe, which processed $2 billion a day, tech debt. Gregory, Gavin said, leaning back in his Herman Miller chair, spinning a pen he did not know how to refill. We need to talk about velocity. We need to talk about agility. We need to talk about the legacy anchor. I was the anchor. I sat hands folded looking at him. I am 61, and I have been with this bank since before Gavin was born. I wrote the batch processing scripts that handled overnight settlements in 1989. I survived the dot-com bust, the 2008 financial crisis, and 3 different chief executive officers who thought blockchain was the answer to everything. I do not smoke, but sitting across from Gavin, I felt the phantom itch of a nicotine addiction I never had. I wanted to blow smoke in his face just to see if he would cough up his avocado toast. Go on, Gavin, I said. My voice was calm. It is the voice I use when a server rack overheats. Tell me about the legacy anchor. Look, Greg, he said. He called me Greg. Nobody calls me Greg. You are a legend, seriously. The work you did on the COBOL core is historic, but we are pivoting. We are going cloud-native, microservices, Kubernetes. We need builders, not maintainers, and frankly, your salary band is heavy. We can hire 3 full-stack developers for what you are costing us. He smiled. It was a pity smile, the kind you give a dog right before you take it behind the shed. So, he continued, sliding a thick envelope across the table. We put together a transition package. It is generous. Early retirement, honorary emeritus status. You get to walk away a hero. I looked at the envelope. I did not reach for it. I was thinking of the code humming in the basement, 40 floors below us. I had spent 40 years building and maintaining that code, ensuring that millions of transactions cleared without a single cent going missing. To Gavin, it was just numbers on a balance sheet, but to me it was a legacy of stability. Gavin, I said, ignoring the envelope. Do you know what runs on the Z-series mainframe in the basement? Old code, he scoffed. Spaghetti. That is why we are scrapping it. It is not just code, Gavin. It is the clearinghouse interface. It is the SwiftWire verifications. It is the biometric security protocol that adheres to the federal banking regulations regarding high-value transaction limits. You know, the laws that keep the Regulatory Commission from turning this building into a crater and throwing us all in prison. He waved a hand dismissively. We have got consultants for that. A squad is arriving on Monday. They will scrape the logic, refactor it into modern languages, and we will be live on the cloud by the 3rd quarter. We have got everything under control, Greg. I almost laughed. I really did. The sheer, unadulterated hubris was almost beautiful, like watching a drunk man try to juggle chainsaws. He thought a team of 22-year-old consultants who learned code from internet tutorials could parse 30 years of assembly language and job control scripting in a weekend. They did not even know what a race condition was, let alone how to debug a transaction deadlock. So, effective immediately? I asked. Effective immediately, Gavin nodded. We need your badge and your laptop. Security will escort you out. Standard protocol, nothing personal. I stood up, my knees popped to sound like a dry twigs snapping in a dead forest. I smoothed down my collar. I did not look at the envelope. I reached into my leather briefcase and pulled out my identification badge, the chipped plastic card that had been my passport to the inner sanctum for 4 decades. I placed it on the table. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my RSA hardware token, the little fob with the changing numbers. I placed it next to the badge. Is that everything? Gavin asked, eyeing my briefcase as if I might be stealing staplers. That is everything the company owns, I said. I did not mention the other thing, the thing they could not take, the thing that was not in my briefcase, but in the ridges of my thumb and the unique pattern of my iris, the biometric hash stored in the deepest, darkest, read-only sector of the mainframe security kernel. The hash that I had hard-coded into the system 10 years ago, after a foreign botnet tried to brute force our administrator accounts. the hash that required my physical presence to authorize any changes to the core settlement logic. Gavin did not know about it. Why would he? He had never read the documentation. He probably thought documentation was a streaming video genre. Good luck, Gavin, I said. You are going to need it. We make our own luck, he grinned, tapping his temple. Disrupt or die, right? Something like that, I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked past the open plan office where the junior developers sat on beanbag chairs, wearing noise-canceling headphones, typing code that would likely break the moment it touched real data. I walked to the elevator. I did not look back. The security guard, Davis, looked surprised to see me with a cardboard box. Everything okay, Mr. Weller? Fine, Davis, I said. Just upgrading my operating system. I walked out into the sunshine. It was gray and industrial, smelling of exhaust and wet pavement. It smelled like freedom. I got into my sedan. I did not cry. I did not scream. I adjusted the rearview mirror and checked my collar. Disrupt or die, I whispered to myself. I put the car in drive. I was going home to water my hydrangeas. And then I was going to wait because I knew exactly how long it takes for a system to realize its heart has been ripped out. About 48 hours. Monday morning was going to be interesting. My garden is a lot like a mainframe if you think about it. It requires structure, patience, and the ruthless elimination of bugs. Saturday morning, I was knee-deep in mulch, pruning the dead heads off my hydrangeas. The soil was cool and damp under my gloves. It was the first time in 20 years I had not spent a Saturday morning checking the server logs over coffee. Usually, my weekends were punctuated by the phantom buzzing of my phone, alerts, warnings, the heartbeat of the bank. Today, the phone sat on the patio table, silent. It was a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I spent the morning planning new bulbs, focusing on the simple, physical tasks that kept my mind off the bank. I made tea. Earl Grey, hot, not the combat kombucha Gavin was pumping into the veins of my old department. I sat on my porch and watched a squirrel trying to break into the bird feeder. I named him Gavin. He was persistent, annoying, and ultimately destined to fail, because I had engineered that feeder with the same paranoia I applied to the bank's firewall. I had spent hours designing the baffle, ensuring that no matter how hard he tried, he could not reach the seed. Around noon, the first text came through. It was from Liam, a junior engineer I had hired 2 years ago. Liam was a good young man. He actually knew what a pointer was, which put him in the top 1% of the new hires. He had a genuine curiosity about how the systems worked, unlike the consultants who just wanted to build pretty web pages. Greg, are you really gone? The consultants are here, the message read. I took a sip of tea and did not reply. I could picture it perfectly. The conference room would be filled with whiteboards covered in meaningless diagrams, circles and arrows, and words like synergy written in red marker. They would be talking about decoupling the monolith. They would be looking at my code, millions of lines of COBOL, job control language, and transactions, and treating it like toxic waste. They did not understand that the monolith was not just a pile of rocks. It was a load-bearing wall that held up the entire financial infrastructure of the bank. By Sunday evening, the modernization had begun. I knew this because my phone buzzed again. Another text from Liam. They are bypassing the staging environment, Liam wrote. Gavin says we need to move fast. He gave them root access to the development partition. They are running scripts I have never seen. I felt a cold spike in my chest. Root access to the development partition without a staging sandbox. It was the digital equivalent of doing open-heart surgery with a chainsaw while riding a unicycle. I closed my eyes. I could see the system map in my head. It was a beautiful, complex web of dependencies. If you touched the customer master file, it rippled through to the loan servicing module. If you updated the loan module, it pinged the general ledger. And if the general ledger did not get the handshake back within 0.05 of a second, it triggered the fraud lock. The fraud lock was the key. The fraud lock was not just a line of code. It was a biological gate. 10 years ago, after the cybersecurity incident, the board had panicked. They wanted accountability. They wanted a human neck to choke if things went wrong. So, I gave them mine. I built a biometric authorization layer into the core update sequence for the settlement engine. To push a change to the production settlement logic, the code that actually moves the money out of the bank, you needed 2 things. a cryptographic key, which they had, and a biometric scan of the senior architect, which was currently pruning hydrangeas in New Jersey. They had not hit that wall yet. They were still playing in the shallow end, messing with the user interface, changing fonts and moving buttons. They thought they were swimming. They did not realize they were paddling towards a waterfall. I went inside and cooked a risotto. Stirring rice is meditative. It requires constant attention, just like a batch process. You cannot rush it. If you turn the heat up too high, you burn it. If you stop stirring, it glues together. Gavin was the type of cook who would blast the heat, throw in the rice, and walk away to check his social media. Monday morning arrived with the grim inevitability of a system crash. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning out of habit. I showered, dressed in my casual clothes, and sat down at my computer. I was not logging into the bank's virtual private network. That would be illegal. But I still had access to the public-facing status page, the one customers saw, all systems operational. The page claimed, "Lies," I whispered to the screen. I knew what was happening inside that building. The consultants were probably high-fiving. They had likely refactored the login screen and pushed it live. "Look at us," they would say. "We are agile." We changed the color of the submit button to disruptive blue. But deep down in the basement, in the climate-controlled server room, where the air is kept at a crisp 64 degrees, the mainframe was watching. It was seeing these new, unfamiliar commands coming down the pipeline. It was checking its access control lists. It was looking for a fingerprint that was not there. It was waiting, and so was I. The cracks started showing on Tuesday. It was not a total collapse. Legacy systems do not usually explode all at once. They die by 1,000 cuts. It started with the audit logs. In banking, if you do not log a transaction, it did not happen. And if it did not happen but the money moved, that is not a bug. That is a felony. I was at the grocery store debating between organic and non-organic avocados. Gavin had ruined the concept of avocados for me, but I still like guacamole. My phone rang. It was Liam. Not a text, a real call. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted to answer. The instinct to fix, to troubleshoot, to save the ship was burned into my DNA. But I looked at the avocados. They were firm, unyielding, like me. I picked up. "Hello, Liam. Greg. Oh God, Greg. You have to help me." His voice was an octave higher than usual. He sounded like he was hyperventilating in a server closet. "Calm down, Liam. Breathe. What is wrong?" "The transaction identification numbers," he sputtered. "They are skipping. We processed the morning batch, and the sequence numbers are jumping by tens of thousands. The compliance dashboard is lighting up like a Christmas tree, but Gavin told us to suppress the warnings." "Suborn the warnings?" I repeated, my voice flat. "He told you to mute the fire alarm while the house smells like smoke. He said it is just legacy noise," Liam whimpered. "He said the new microservices handle indexing differently, and the old mainframe is just confused. He called the error logs old-fashioned spaghetti in the morning meeting. Old-fashioned spaghetti." I squeezed the avocado in my hand. It did not yield, but my knuckles turned white. "Listen to me carefully. Liam," I said, leaning against the display of crackers, "do not suppress those warnings. Print them out. Email them to your personal account. Document that you were ordered to ignore them. You will need that paper trail when the regulators come knocking on the door. But how do I fix the sequence jump? The consultants are trying to force a reindex on the live database." "They are doing what?" I almost dropped the phone. "Reindexing a live database during business hours is suicide. It locks the database tables. Nobody can read, and nobody can write. The bank effectively freezes." "Gavin gave them the go-ahead," Liam said. "He said we must move fast and break things." "Well," I said, a cold calm settling over me, "he has definitely got the breaking things part down." "Liam, listen to me. Do nothing. Do not type a single command. If you touch that database while it is reindexing, you will corrupt the pointers. You will turn $2 billion of customer data into digital confetti." "But the system is slowing down. The tellers are reporting delays. Customers are getting angry in the lobby. Let it slow down," I said. "Go to lunch, Liam. Take a long lunch. In fact, turn off your phone for the afternoon. Greg, please, just tell me the override code for the table lock." "I know you know it." I did know it. It was a hexadecimal string I had memorized in 1997. It would release the tables, cancel the reindex, and restore sanity. "I cannot help you, Liam," I said softly. "I am retired, remember? I am an anchor. You do not want an anchor dragging you down. I hung up. I stood there in the produce aisle, staring at the bananas. My heart was pounding. It went against everything I believed in to let a system fail. I had spent my life keeping the lights on. I had missed birthdays, anniversaries, and vacations to keep those lights on. But if I fixed it now, Gavin would take the credit. He would say his new methodology solved the problem. He would learn nothing. And next week, he would do something worse. I put the avocado in my basket. By Wednesday, the small fires were becoming a blaze. Customers were posting online, complaining that their applications showed a balance of $0, or that they could not transfer their rent money. The bank's official social media account was replying with copied apologies about experiencing technical difficulties as they upgraded their systems to serve customers better. Meta them better by locking them out of their own money. Then came the internal leak. Someone, probably Liam, posted a screenshot on an anonymous technology forum. It showed the central processing unit usage of the mainframe. It was pinned at 99%. The consultants had deployed a script that was querying the entire transaction history for every single user login. It was a denial of service attack, and it was coming from inside the house. I watched the stock price dip just a little, down 45 cents. Burn, I whispered. But the real show had not started yet. Tomorrow was Thursday, the end of the quarter. Thursday was settlement day, the day the bank had to reconcile its books with the Federal Reserve, the day massive wire transfers moved between institutions, the day the system had to be perfect, and the day the system would check for the biometric authorization of the senior architect. I checked my calendar. Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning, spa appointment, perfect timing. Thursday morning dawned with the kind of crisp, clear blue sky that usually signals a good day for financial markets. For our bank, however, it was the sky over a battlefield. Quarterly settlement is not a joke. It is not an agile sprint. It is a hard, federally mandated deadline. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, billions of dollars in commercial wires, international clearings, and interbank settlements must be finalized. If the ledger does not balance, or if the transmission does not go through, the fines start at painful and quickly escalate to regulatory hearings. I was at a day spa in Cherry Hill, wearing a fluffy white robe and sipping water. My phone was in a locker, turned off. I had booked a full day of treatments, determined to enjoy the fruits of my forced retirement. At the bank, I knew exactly what the sequence of events was. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the batch jobs kick off. The mainframe begins aggregating the millions of transactions from the last 90 days. This usually takes 2 hours. With the modifications Gavin's team had installed, it was probably choking on its own data. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the first warning bells would ring. The verification hashes would not match. Why? Because the consultants had changed the character encoding on the database without updating the translation tables. At 11 o'clock in the morning, panic would set in. The settlement window opens. Wires need to start moving, but the system is locked in a verification loop. At 11:15, I was getting a hot stone massage. The masseuse, Heather, asked me if my shoulders were tense. "Your shoulders are like concrete, Mr. Weller," she said. "Not anymore, Heather," I murmured into the face cradle. Not anymore. Back at the office, Gavin would be screaming. I could hear it. He would be standing in the operations center, his vest damp with sweat. "Just force it," he would be yelling. "Override the check. We have to send the file." And that is when they would try it, the emergency override. The emergency override is a function, I wrote. It exists for exactly this scenario, when the automated checks fail and an authorized human needs to confirm the transfer. But you cannot just click a button for $2 billion. The command requires elevated privileges. There was only one administrator account active with that level of clearance, mine. At 12:30 in the afternoon, I walked out of the spa. My skin felt refreshed, my soul felt light. I turned my phone on. It vibrated instantly, and then it kept vibrating. It danced across the bench in the locker room. I had 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and 88 texts. I scrolled through them. Gavin at 12 o'clock. Gregory, pick up. Gavin at 12:05. We have a situation. Gavin at 12:15. Need password for override. Gavin at 12:20. Seriously, pick up the phone. Liam at 12:30. It is the biometrics, Greg. The screen says authorization required. Senior Architect Biometrics. Gavin is losing his mind. He tried to force it. The system locked him out entirely. I smiled a cold, thin smile. The security protocol worked exactly as designed. When the system detects an unauthorized attempt to bypass the highest level of security, like a frantic executive trying to force a settlement, it assumes a hostile intrusion. It goes into lockdown mode. It locks the file system, disconnects the external gateways, freezes the assets, and displays a single prompt. Critical security lockdown awaiting biometric verification. User G. Weller. Timeout in 4 hours. If the biometric scan is not received within 4 hours, the system assumes the facility has been compromised. It initiates a hard wipe of the encryption keys. The data remains, but it becomes unreadable. The recovery from physical tape backups held in a secure mountain vault takes 3 days. The bank would be ruined in 3 days. My phone rang again. It was not Gavin. The caller identification read Franklin P. Vance, chairman of the board. Franklin was 70 years old. He was old money. He did not know the details of cloud computing, but he knew what crisis smelled like. I let it ring 3 times, then I answered. Hello, Franklin. Long time, Gregory. His voice was shaking. It was not anger, it was fear. Where are you? I am near Cherry Hill, I said. Just finished a lovely spa session. Why the system, he said. It is asking for your thumb. Literally. Gavin says we cannot move the money without you. Oh, that, I said, checking my watch. That is the fraud prevention protocol. I documented that in 2014, Franklin. Page 4002 of the Disaster Recovery Manual. You signed off on it. Gregory, please, Franklin said. We have less than 2 hours before the Federal Reserve window closes. If we miss the settlement, we are facing regulatory seizure. That sounds serious, Franklin. Name your price, he snapped. Just come in. We will send a vehicle. I do not like being rushed, I said, and I am retired. I turned in my badge. Remember? Gavin was very specific about the immediate nature of my departure. Gregory, please stop the games. What do you want? I looked at the time. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Plenty of time to drive there if I took the highway. I want a meeting, I said, in the boardroom, with the full board and Gavin. In 1 hour, Franklin said. Just get here. And Franklin? Yes? Have security print a visitor pass. I do not have a badge anymore. I hung up. I got into my sedan. I did not speed. I put on a podcast about gardening. The traffic was light. The world was in chaos, and I was bringing the only fire extinguisher, but I was not going to use it for free. The drive to the bank took 45 minutes. I saw the chaos through the lobby glass. Davis, the security guard, looked relieved when I walked in. He printed a visitor sticker. Gregory Weller, guest. I stuck it on my sweater. The elevator ride to the 40th floor was silent. With each floor, the value of my specialized knowledge increased. By the time I hit 40, I was the most expensive resource on the eastern seaboard. The double doors to the boardroom were open. Laptops displayed red graphs. The entire board was there. Franklin Vance sat at the head. Gavin stood by the window, his face gray and arrogance gone. Gregory, Franklin said, thank you for coming. I stood at the end of the table. I heard you had a technical issue. It is the biometric lock, Gavin croaked. We tried to bypass it, but it locked the file system. You cannot bypass it while in lockdown, I said. It encrypts the right heads. Did you not read the emergency documentation file? Gavin looked down. I did not see it. I turned to Franklin. You have about 90 minutes before the Federal Reserve window closes. If I do not authenticate, the encryption keys wipe. The bank goes dark and regulators close us down. Fix it, please, Franklin said. I can fix it, I said. It will take me 30 seconds to scan my thumb and retina. The system will unlock and process the queue in 20 minutes. But by law and contract, I am no longer an employee. And let us talk about the legalities, I continued. Your new Chief Technology Officer, Gavin, tried to unilaterally withhold my early retirement package and pension disbursements unless I handed over my credentials. Under New Jersey law and California Welfare and Institutions, Code Section 15610.30, which governs elder financial abuse, since we have major operations in California, that attempt constitutes elder financial abuse through the coercive withholding of contractually owed assets. Franklin glared at Gavin, who shrank back. Furthermore, I continued, Gavin and this board are in direct breach of fiduciary duty to your shareholders. Deploying unvetted scripts directly to a live, multi-billion-dollar transaction ledger without a staging sandbox violates federal compliance standards. I have documented every warning Gavin ordered the junior engineers to ignore. The documentation is in a secure external location, so if I scan my hand now as a civilian, the liability is entirely on you. We will hire you back, Franklin said. Reinstated at full salary, no, I said. Greg, please, Gavin said. I am sorry. I pulled a contract from my briefcase and slid it down the table. It is a consultancy agreement. I want to be an independent contractor. Irrevocable. The rate is $500 an hour with a guaranteed minimum of 40 hours a week, plus a quarterly retention bonus. Franklin put on his reading glasses. Gregory. This is excessive. Check the math, Franklin, I said. It is a lot less than the fine you will pay if that wire does not go out in 89 minutes. And one more thing, I said. Look at Clause 4. The consultant reports directly to the board. The Chief Technology Officer shall report to the consultant for all infrastructure matters. Gavin does not touch the mainframe ever. He can play with the user interface, but the adults are running the infrastructure now. Franklin stared at the contract. He was a businessman. He understood leverage. This is extortion, Jenkins muttered from the back. No, I said. This is supply and demand. You have a demand for a thumb that opens a $2 billion lock. I supply the thumb. The price is the price. When I wrote the code, I told the board we needed a redundant team. You said it was too expensive. You said, Gregory, you are the best. Just handle it. So I handled it. I built it so secure that not even the board could move money without me. You did not pay for redundancy then. You are paying for it now, with interest. Franklin looked at the legal advisor. Is this enforceable? She skimmed it. It is standard independent contractor language, sir, except for Clause 7. It states that biometric access is non-transferable, and any attempt to coerce or replicate the consultant's biometric data constitutes a breach of contract, resulting in an immediate termination fee of $5 million. That is for fraud liability compliance, I said. You signed off on the original logic, Franklin. Franklin looked at the screen. Time to settlement failure, 1 hour, 12 minutes and 0 seconds. Gavin, Franklin said quietly, shut up. Gavin's mouth snapped shut. Franklin picked up a pen and signed the contract. He slid it back. Welcome back, Gregory, he said. I put it in my briefcase. Thank you, Franklin. I turned to Gavin. Give me your laptop. Gavin handed over his computer. I opened the terminal, typed in the address of the mainframe gateway, and pressed my right thumb against the scanner. A green light blinked. The text changed. Identity verified. Weller G access granted. Lockdown disengaged. Resuming batch processing. It is processing, I said. The queue is draining. You will hit the Federal Reserve window with 8 minutes to spare. I closed the laptop. You should really clean your keyboard, Gavin. We need to establish ground rules, I said. Effective immediately. No code touches the mainframe without my review. If Gavin's team wants to pull data, they use the read-only interfaces I built. They do not query the database directly, ever. Solvency is more important than speed. I looked at Jenkins. Jenkins, do you remember the security breach in 2009? A digital attack hit the firewall on Christmas Eve. Everyone went home. Who stayed? I stayed for 36 hours. Rewrote the filtering rules by hand, and saved this bank $40 million. And do you know what I got? A travel mug that leaked. I am not doing this for a mug anymore. Gavin tried to perform surgery with a spoon. Gavin, Franklin said, you are off the infrastructure committee, reassigned to customer experience, focus on application colors, leave the plumbing to Gregory. I will need an office, I said, the corner one, and I want my old team back. Liam, Valerie, and bring Davis up from security. He needs a raise, and I want someone at the door who knows my name. Whatever you want, Franklin waved his hand. I looked at the screen. Settlement complete. Funds transferred. Status balanced. I walked past Gavin and whispered, don't worry, Gavin. You can still play with the buttons, just not on my servers. The following Monday, the atmosphere at the bank had shifted. I arrived at 9 o'clock and parked in the reserved spot. Gavin was in the annex building, in charge of digital aesthetics. It was fitting. I walked to the operations center. Liam was there looking rested. Greg, he said, is it true you are back? I am consulting, Liam, I said. It pays better. I rolled back the changes. I said. We are back on the stable version from 2018. We will upgrade when we have a proper plan. All right, everyone, listen up. Accuracy is the only metric that matters. If you move fast and lose money, you are a liability. We spent the day reviewing the code, deleting every script that lacked proper comments. I spent the afternoon in the server room. The cool air and blinking lights were comforting. I scanned my thumb to unlock a rack. I found a loose server blade and pulled it out. Liam came over. Greg, why did you come back? Because I built this, Liam. It is old, but it feeds families, it pays mortgages, it keeps the lights on. You do not burn down a house just because you do not like the wallpaper. Can you teach me the mainframe languages? Grab a chair, kid, I smiled, and get me a tea. Earl Grey. Hot 3 months later, the bank was boring again. Boring means the money is safe. I only came in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The rest of the time, I worked from my garden, monitoring the logs on a secure tablet. Gavin eventually quit, pursuing a startup that folded in 6 weeks. On my final day of the stabilization phase, I placed a black leather binder in the center of the boardroom table. Inside, I had documented the philosophy of stability, and on the last page I left a surprise. I had updated the biometric lock. It now required 2 keys, my biometric scan and the counter-signature of a qualified junior architect. I had promoted Liam. If they ever wanted to replace me again, they would have to deal with him too. And Liam was loyal. I walked out of the building. The air was crisp. I got into my sedan and checked my bank account. The quarterly retainer had just cleared. The number was very large. System secured, I said to myself. I drove home. I had hydrangeas to prune. And for the first time in 40 years, I was not worried about the phone ringing. Let it ring. I am a consultant now. I charge for after-hours calls. And if they ever try to replace me again, well, good luck. I know where the off switch is.